experience technical difficulties during the meeting, please contact the Democratic Services for assistance. You should make every effort to reconnect to the meeting. However, please be aware that proceedings will continue as long as the meeting is quorate. Those wishing to receive Welsh to English translation should have registered prior to the meeting using the details provided. If you haven't yet processed the simultaneous translation facility, please telephone 0330 777 2406 and enter the code 3254 196 and place your telephone on mute. Mobile phones can be muted by pressing the mute button. Landline telephones can be muted by pressing 6. Members are reminded that, with the exception of any exempt items, the proceedings of the meeting will be recorded and the audio stream can be accessed through the service website. I will now hand over to the clerk. Are there any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Again, if I can just go back to the normal practice, which is to do a roll call. That helps identify who's present and if there are any connection issues, and hopefully it won't take us too long, Chair. So if you're happy to indulge me with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, we mentioned Councillor Dan Thomas, the Chair, has sent his apologies. He can't be with us. His son has injured himself, so he won't be with us today. Very briefly, going through it in alphabetical, the order given here. Yourself, Councillor Sharon Freegard. Can you identify yourself? Thank you. And then we've got Councillor Emlyn Shavoni. Thank you. Councillor David Ryan. Present. Thank you. Councillor John Davis. Thank you. But apologies from Councillor Carl Jordan, Chair. Councillor Edwin Roderick. Thank you. Councillor Gwynfor Thomas.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Elwyn Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth Lloyd. Thank you. Councillor Patience Bentu.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Councillor Tina Higgins.
Bore da, presennol.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mark Tierney.
I've just had a message from. Oh, sorry, Harrod, you were going to say we were.
Apologies.
In fact, I can read it here. He's got problems trying to join due to a power cut, as far as I can work out, and he will also have to leave just before 12. So we will see what can be done. But he's not with us at this point in time. Yourself, Councillor Freegard, had mentioned. Councillor Matthew Crowley sent his apologies, Chair. And last but not least, Councillor Victoria Holland. Councillor Holland. Okay, Councillor Holland doesn't appear to be with us as well. Officers in attendance then, and that's all the members. Officers in attendance, myself, David Daycock, Clerk and Monitoring Officer. Then on my left here, Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Ewan Craig. Thank you. And on my right, Sarah Mansbridge, Section 151 Officer.
Morning, present.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Fire Officer, Craig Flannery. Apologies to do. Thank you. Assistant Chief Officer, Midrian Harris. Thank you. Area Manager, Justin Lewis. Thank you. Area Manager, Adrian Smith. Apologies. Thank you. But apologies from Area Manager, Peter Greenslade, and from Area Manager, Geraint Thomas. Temporary Area Manager, Sean Lloyd.
Present.
Thank you. Kelly Jackson, Corporate Head of Resources. Thank you. Stephen Phillips, Head of Finance. Thank you. Mark Miles, Head of HR.
Apologies.
Thank you. Alan Lewis can't be with us. He's unwell. And Harold Hawkes, Democratic Services Officer.
Present.
I don't think there are any other officers, but I would take this opportunity, Chair, to introduce Trudy Merrick, who has joined us, who is Assistant Chief Constable of South Wales Police. And Trudy is with us today, shadowing some of the senior officers within the Fire Authority, and has come along to see the Fire Authority in action via one of its committees. So Trudy, hopefully you'll find this a rewarding and interesting experience.
Thank you, and good morning everybody.
Thank you very much. That's the roll call, Chair. And if you're happy, if we can move that into apologies for absence, which we've already done, but I'll just recap. We've had formal apologies from Councillor Dan Thomas, Councillor Carl Jordan, Councillor Matthew Rheoli. That's
Thank
the
you, Dave.
apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Can we move on to item 2 then, the declaration by members of any personal or prejudicial interests?
Thank you, Chair. If I can advise members very briefly, 2 things. One is I'd advise them to declare a personal interest on anything on the agenda which relates to or affects their constituent authorities. If members could do that, please. Yeah. Thank you. And I'd also advise members to, as a formality.
Takes us on to the...
Sorry, Chair, I've still got another one. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Dave. I'm having a bit of trouble hearing you. Chair's announcements, are we ready to move on?
No, Chair, I've got another interest to advise members on for a second.
Okay.
I would also advise members to declare personal interest in relation to item 5, the revenue budget. So if members could agree that and confirm in writing afterwards. Not have to sneeze in agreement as well. Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'll take that as a
Okay, thank you, Chair.
So that's the interests, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Chair's announcements. Other than I just want to welcome Trudy this morning. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting meeting for her. And to move on to agenda item 4, to confirm and approve as a true record the minutes of the previous meeting of the Resource Management Committee held on the 27th of January 2025. So that's
sorry,
pages.
Chair, can I cut across you?
Yeah.
Can I ask Justin Lewis to come in as a operational update, please? Before
Thank
we
you,
get
Justin.
on to the minutes, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave. Okay, situational update for RMC today for the period since the 15th of March. And I'll briefly cover off onto the period of wildfire that we've had and some of the key incidents we've had from business as usual. So we've had a very, very busy and heightened period of activity due to the weather and the wildfires across the service area. And to put this into perspective for you, during this period, Mid and West Wales have attended 81 Category 1 wildfires. Now, Category 1 wildfire is one that can usually be dealt with 2 pump appliances and within 2 hours. So 81 of those, we've attended an additional 50 Category 2 wildfire incidents, and that is where there are more than 2 pump appliances and the incident takes more than 2 hours to deal with. And I'll go through the areas in a second. In addition to that, we've attended 6 fatal road traffic collisions across the service area, and I also attended 5 medical calls. One of those resulted in a ROS, which is return of life. We attended 6 property fires, 4 of those being domestic, 1 being in a hospital, which I'll cover in a bit, and 1 commercial fire as well. In addition to that, we've had 1 rescue from height and 1 rescue from mud. So just to give you a perspective of covering the 2 service areas, the joint fire control has handled since the 15th of March, so just coming up to a month, 13,500 calls to the control centre. So the call demand peaked on the 20th of March, and during that 24-hour period, they received 1,031 calls. This was a requirement for the JFC to declare an ops Pwyllgor, and that is where they transfer some of the non-life risk calls across to other services across the UK, and that was there were 28 fire controls that assisted during this period. This is the second time that we've had to invoke ops Pwyllgor, and the last one being during Storm Bird. So just to cover off some of the activity in terms of the wildfire, and I'll just give you the areas, and if some of them catch your attention and you want more detail around your particular areas, then I'm happy to catch up with you outside of the meeting. But areas that we did, and all of these are category 2, which is outside of 2 hours, and all of these were above 4 pumping appliances requiring to attend these. So we attended Pencader, Brymberian, Banwen, Penlan, Swansea, Cwmreidol, Ceredigion, and we had to use the MAWW helicopter to assist us with that one, as it was over a very protracted period. Vinia in Llanelli, Fire Ross in Rhyadr, Dinas Baglan Mounting, and that was a 7-pump incident. Penlan in Swansea, Abercosan in Machynlleth, Kilby Hill, Port Tennant, Crynant, Seven Sisters, Llanwrtyd Wells, Rhyd of Ro, Llanrydod Wells, Llanon in Llanelli over the weekend. So you may have seen that on social media, where it came very close to properties and then Story down. It is worth noting that the service drones were used throughout these wildfires on a number of incidents to establish and assist with risk assessments, and this helped reduce the number of pumps and personnel entering into risk areas, allowing for a greater focus on tactics used at all of those incidents. So that's the wildfire over the last month. So business as usual calls. On the 2nd of April, we attended a domestic fire in the Cardigan area. It was a fire in a 3-storey domestic farmhouse, measuring approximately 30 metres by 10 metres. Thankfully, all persons were accounted for. However, there was significant structural damage within the property, and the owners were unable to re-enter until they'd had advice from structural and electrician around that. On the 2nd of April, we attended an RTC trapped in Llangennech, just outside of Llanelli, and this was an RTC involving 5 private motor vehicles, with 2 casualties, 1 extricated by the service personnel using hydraulic cutting equipment. However, unfortunately, 1 male was confirmed code blue at the area, and crews assisted with searching the surrounding area for further casualties. On the 5th of April, we attended Prince Philip Hospital in Llanelli, where a patient had barricaded themselves into a room and set fire. Crews were involved with assisting with containing the fire and ventilating both the room and the ward area. Again, on the 5th of April, we attended an RTC at Story Arms involving a motorcycle with 2 casualties, 1 casualty confirmed code blue and the other one conveyed to hospital by air ambulance. On the 6th of April, another RTC involving 1 private motor vehicle and 1 65-year-old male confirmed code blue trapped underneath the vehicle. On the same day, this incident you may have seen both on social media and the news outlets, was a domestic fire in Carmarthen, 4 pumps, water bowser and an aerial ladder. Property measuring approximately 5 metres by 10 metres, consisting of 2 floors. The property was fully destroyed by fire, and unfortunately the surrounding properties, people were not allowed to return to those properties due to structural concerns. On the 9th of April, another domestic property consisting of 2 sections, 2-storey main house and a 1-storey pool and leisure facility. Crews were involved in preventing the fire spread from the pool and leisure facility into the main house, which is a successful outcome from that. There had been a number of other incidents over the weekend, RTCs and further grass fires, and that's Chair, that is my update for the last month.
Oh, thank you for that. And can I take this opportunity to thank all the firefighters for their service and hard work in this really challenging and unprecedented time, really. It's been very difficult. Okay, thank you very much. Before?
Chair, could I ask a
Yes,
question?
sorry, Dave.
It's Councillor Glenmark. Thanks, Justin. That's quite an update. 13,500 calls in a month.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Just
Yeah.
intrigued about the grass fires more than anything else. And please, any other officers in the room, it's mentioned as unprecedented. Have we ever seen anything like this before or not? Because it seems incredible, and especially in April as well.
Yeah.
So I know the chair and myself and the vice chair intend to visit some of the stations involved with this, but my goodness, it seems a real drain on resource, and I just how have we coped with it really? Because it's been very persistent. So two questions. One, has anybody ever seen anything like this before, and are we managing that resource well?
Yes, I mean, it is unprecedented. We have had very busy periods in the past, but this has been one of the busiest that we've ever had. What we have used, as I said, towards the end there, we've used, whereas years ago we would probably have attended some of these incidents with 10, 12 pumps to tackle these fires. We've utilised technology now by use of the drone. We're able to get the drone airborne, do a risk assessment and reduce the numbers of pumping appliances. But the number of incidents has been unprecedented. There, so there's about 130 incidents of wildfire up until the weekend. To put that into context, in terms of the NFCC declaration of wildfires across the UK, there was just over 300, so more than half within the Mid and West of Wales area. So it shows how impactful and how busy we have been within the Mid and West Wales area. We've coped reasonably well with that, or we've coped well with that. We stood up a command room within the joint fire control to allow some of the pressure to be taken from the business as usual calls from the call handlers, so that we could then undertake the resourcing and the relief of crews at incidents from the command room to allow control operators to deal with their business as usual. And the amount of calls, the repeat calls, one of them that we had a couple of weeks ago, one incident which was just off the M4, they received in excess of 150 calls in less than 10 minutes, repeat calls to that incident. So it does show, as you say, exceptionally busy and pressurised time for the crews.
Thank you. It's just, and the chair has mentioned it, we're full of admiration of that work, and it must have been a massive challenge. So please pass on good wishes. As I said, the chair and the vice chair, we do intend visiting some of these stations and thanking them personally for that work. But yeah, from the authority as a whole, we need that message to go out there. We realise
Thank you for that. And I can see Councillor Turney has got his hand up.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I've had some technical difficulties this morning, so I arrived halfway through your update. My apologies for that. But I just wanted to mention the fire that happened on the Prestellis in Pembrokeshire, and I understand that was a controlled burn that went out of control, and it went out of control over a period of a number of days. I just wondered, if you haven't touched on it already, what sort of discussion happens between the fire service and landowners who undertake this sort of burning, and when we then have to step in and deal with the uncontrolled element of it, what sort of ramifications are there from that? Because obviously we're using resources then in a situation that really we shouldn't have had to have used our resources.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Turney, thanks for that question. If I can respond to that, and I primarily respond with the Wales Wildfire Board hat on in terms of that partnership approach to dealing with wildfires. And 2018 was the last time we had the activity that we've seen this year. And it will come in peaks and troughs, and it was so reliant on the weather. That the pockets of the weather land right. Burning as part of land management has been a technique that society has used for centuries upon centuries, but over the last few decades, shall we say, we as a service, we as a sector, we as communities have driven that practice into, let's say, driven it underground almost, that we have got so much work to do now in terms of building those relations with those landowners that we as a service accept burning as a technique for dealing with land management, albeit in a controlled manner. And that's the point that you raise in terms of this controlled aspect versus uncontrolled aspect. We have no issue with the controlled burn at the right time, in the right place, with the right resource. We need to be able to engage with these land managers to reassure them that we're there to assist in that process, as opposed to just responding and extinguishing each one of those. There are strict timelines in terms of the burn window, when that can happen in terms of nature and the environment and so forth. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of moving that thought process across communities and across society, and the bulk of that is building relations with the landowners, which is why the agricultural unions set on the Wales Wildfire Board to try and move that in that certain direction. Yeah.
Is that okay, Mark?
That's fine, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I had one question that was raised by a resident asking whether we were going to review or revise education in terms of educating the public and children regarding fires, given this unprecedented period.
Yeah, education is a key part, isn't it, in terms of that prevention. We see the strength of that in terms of where we are with our preventative approach of domestic fires in properties over the last 2 decades. The education route with regard to wildfires needs to be slightly different, because at no point will we be able to succeed in not seeing those wildfires happening at all, because the land continues to grow, and we've seen over the last 2 years. We'll never stop that or prevent that from happening. And the planet has been burning for centuries upon centuries. The key bit is that we can control it versus uncontrolling it, so or dealing with it in an uncontrolled manner, rather. So the key bit of that education is very different to the preventative approach of stopping fires in homes. Accepting fire as a technique, along with cutting and along with grazing, and that would take me back to things like the agreements, the partnership agreement, and the SPF. I'm looking at Sustainable Farming Scheme. SFS. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Davis. So linking into the likes of that, and what does that do for us in terms of land management going forward, with fire in mind as well. So there's a lot of work to do with a number of partner agencies, and I think also over the last few decades, it's been seen as a fire sector issue alone, and it's not a fire sector issue alone. It's a far more general issue for society to deal with.
Thank you for that. Has anybody else got their hands up and Harrod?
Yeah, Councillor Roderick.
Yeah, Chair, if I may. Going on from that, I think the time has come, Chair, for I think the fire authority myself needs to be becoming more high profile in this, because I've been on several hills as of late with Banebrycheiniog, going round, and I live in the middle of hill country, let's put it like that. And these hills are going out of control, mainly due to the lack of grazing. And you can see so much old fag has come back on them. They'll start from natural way to even somebody chucking a cigarette in, as it were. But I think we need to be involved, not only in farming unions, but with the government as well, because people have drawn off the hills in as much as they're not using the hill rights or grazing rights as they were, because the bottom line was at that time the sheep were not paying. But we need to encourage them back on in some way, shape or form. Now, I live very close to the Epping Ranges. There's been fires close to that this year, but the army insists on all those that have got rights on the Epping Ranges fulfill all their rights, or they will take them from them and give them to somebody else, because they as well are very concerned and worried about fires on the Epping Ranges for various reasons, as you know. But I think we need to get out to the media, to the public, to the education which has been involved, but also we need to get the governments to realise what is happening there in agriculture in the background, where people are not showing the interest on grazing the hills. The farming society is going older. Many of the young people do not want to use the hill rights, but we need to encourage them back on there in some way, shape or form. Otherwise, we are going to have one day, as one of you said a long time ago, it's going to be out of control in the valleys, and we are going to lose a village. And at the moment, as far as I'm aware, we've not lost a life, but you know, it's on the doorstep for us. So I think we need to do that, and as yourselves, get back in with the farming unions, but government that need to recognise it as well. You know.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Edwin has got a question.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks. Yeah, just to amplify our thanks to the fire service for what has been obviously very difficult month, at least, and even more than a month. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the pressures being faced by the ambulance service, you hear about it over and over again. People have to wait for hours on end, ambulance are stuck in the A&E and all the rest of it, and all that sort of different pressures there. I presume that we're being drawn now into a lot of that kind of work, and picking up that we're having to deal with more sort of incidents which normally be addressed by the ambulance service, but now we have to be addressed by the fire service. Is that an increasing trend that we're facing? And how are we actually dealing with that additional pressure?
Well, we have a number of stations that do medical response across the organisation. We've had since back in the mid-90s. We've had co-responding going on within the service area, and although that's seen a decline in the last few years, the WAS don't use us as much for the co-responding element of things. What they do utilise us for is out of hospital cardiac arrest and code red instances is what they call them. So yes, we see peaks and troughs with the attendants at medical incidents with them, but predominantly they tend to be around cardiac arrest, which is obviously life and immediate life-threatening situations. The other part that they do utilise, and we have a number of stations that come online with us now, are for falls, where people are, unable, where they fall, they're unable to either get up themselves or put themselves back into a chair or back into bed, and they utilise us, but it's only on stations that have undergone specific training from WASP to undertake those tasks. So that's the situation with the medical response at this moment in time.
If I could just add to that, to the chair, in terms of a comparative, I looked at some numbers the other day. The ambulance service, in terms of the number of incidents they respond to across Wales, something in the region of about 450,000 calls in a year. Fire, as a comparator, are around about the 50,000 mark. So about 9 times less. So in terms of that capacity to be able to assist, albeit this month has been a standout month for us with regard to wildfires. Generally speaking, over the longer term picture, there's capacity there to be able to assist the ambulance sector with some aspects of that work.
Can I very briefly come back in, Chair, for me? I think at this moment in time, what I was on about, if this could be consulted now before the SFS farming schemes are written in tablets of stone, be written into that, and in some way, shape or form, along with the national parks as well, because they're all after the rewilding of the areas and controlled grazing, whatever, to stick for it. And not only that, to encourage landowners where necessary, do more control burns, but under your guidance, because you know it is going to. Partly, I think one day I'm afraid we will lose a life for a lot of property over it. You know, it is a matter of urgency, and I think you know they are blaming the weather at the moment, but if you walk these hills, they are out of control because there are no sheep. I was even involved up on a meeting the other day up in the Blorridge. It has gone wild with heather, and yet here we are, national parks. They are doing, and I said to the national park, and here they are getting heather seed to plant more heather. You know, as if there's that basic knowledge is not there, and they will not take guidance.
If I could provide a little bit of reassurance for you, Councillor Odrick, in terms of the work of the Wales Wildfire Board, the government do sit on that board as well, I should say. So Welsh Government are there with from a number of departments, including those the responsibility for the burn code. So they sit around the table, as well as a number of other partners, including national parks and NRW. NRW have now taken the chair of that group. I handed that over myself within the last few months. But just to provide some reassurance, we did meet as a board with those responsible for developing the SFS, but it was the first version of it to put those points across in terms of fire and land management. And they seem to take things on board, but we haven't had a follow-on meeting since that first version was drawn back. So I will pass it back on to the board and to the chair to encourage a further meeting with those who are responsible for developing the SFS.
I'm glad of that, and I think, with all due respect, I think they will pay more attention to you than they will from the farming areas, to be perfectly frank with you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Harrod, I can't see any other hands up. Can you?
No, that's it.
Okay, but thank you for that, and thank you once again to the firefighters. They've done an amazing job under really, really difficult circumstances. Right, moving on to agenda item 4. To confirm and approve as a true record the minutes of the previous meeting. Sorry. So that we're looking at pages 3 to 10, if we can go through them for accuracy. So page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's all I have. Can I have somebody to confirm that it's a true and accurate record, please?
The two members in the room, Chair, have moved.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. Right, okay, that's confirmed and approved as a true record. Are there any matters arising from the minutes?
I'd like to ask a question, please, Chair.
Yes, certainly.
I'm just curious more than anything else. Has there been any developments, Sarah, in relation to the national insurance was directed from the budget last year in relation to authorities paying that off? Has there been any confirmation that will be paid fully by government?
I've received an informal notification from WLGA last week with regard to this. You must have read my mind actually, because I've just actually got the email out. It isn't a particularly good picture for Wales. It looks like across the public sector, they're saying that there's going to be a £65 million shortfall in the funding that is coming down through from central government. At this point in time, from the Fire Authority perspective, we have added the national insurance increase into the levy. So that has been charged over to our constituent authorities, who will now see a shortfall coming through from Welsh Government. That's the indication that we've got at this point in time. a lot of the shortfall is attributable to indirect costs to the third-party payments. So, for example, for commission care. What we have seen already within the authority is one contractor who has come to us and said that the impact of the national insurance, that contract is going to have to increase. So we're seeing that already as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and I'm sure you'll keep us updated with that as it's ongoing. Right, if we can move on, it's going to be Sarah again. Agenda item 5, the revenue budget and capital programme monitoring report, which is on pages 11 to 34. If I could hand over to you, Sarah, if you've got any updates or you want to make any comments.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members will be familiar with the format of this report. It is the revenue budget and capital monitoring report, and also includes an update of grants and treasury management as at the 28th of Feb. So this is 11 months in. What I will do is I'll take members straight through to section 3 of the report. And if we look at section 3.1, which focuses on the revenue budget, and I'd also draw a member's attention to Appendix A, which you'll find on page 27. And if you look at Appendix A, you'll be able to sort of glance down there at the final column for the variances, which I will take you through. What we are seeing within the whole time is an underspend there of approximately 529,000. That is attributable to vacancies. It's attributable to the way that we budget, where we have some firefighters are in development rate of pay, and we have to budget for them a competent rate of pay to ensure that we have sufficient in the budget going forward. And also within there as well, this year we put in for an increase in the employer's firefighter pension scheme of 31.7%. And when it actually came through, there was a reduction in there, which equated to approximately 200,000. If you look at the on-call, you'll see there that we're projecting an overspend of 388,000, and the majority of that is due to the change in the banding that came into effect on the 1st of January 2025, whereby when we had 2 bandings before, 100% contract and 75% contract, we now have 5 different bandings, and there was an increase then in the retaining fee that was being paid for those different bandings. What we haven't seen within that particular line at this point in time is the impact of the wildfire, the state fires that we've just had an update from the area manager with regard to that. And obviously, if we've got on-call stations going out to attend those fires, then there will be attendance and payments that need to go out. And we haven't seen those coming through yet. They will be coming through in the next couple of months, and that could impact on that line. With regard to the transport line there, you can see that there is an underspend being projected, and that is due to a reduction in fuel, which is part of it is due to the reduction in the amount of litres that have been used this year, and also a reduction in the price as to what we budgeted for. And also as well that within this line, you've got the maintenance of the fleet as well. So we have pre-planned maintenance, and we also budget then for reactive maintenance, and that is coming in lower than was originally anticipated. Within the supplies and services, we've experienced some pressures within that budget, but in particular the cost of the culture review, which is currently forecast at 136,000, for which there was no budget. Just take you down a little bit further on that Appendix A, and you'll see there's a revenue grant. And we were very grateful to receive a revenue grant from the Welsh Government this year of 320,000, which was to pay pressures, which has obviously offset the increase there that we've seen within the on-call. And that grant in 25-26 will be within the RSG. So we've had to, the constituent authorities will be receiving that direct in 25-26. And I think the final one that I would draw members' attention to there is the support staff. And members, as you hear this update from me every time, with regard to how difficult, the difficulties we are experiencing with recruiting staff. and you can see there an underspend of 630,000 on the support staff. So we are projecting an underspend there of the revenue budget of just over 1.1 million. But if you look at that in percentage terms, it's an underspend of approximately 1.6%. So when you look at it in that way, it isn't a massive figure, in my opinion, at this point in time. If I take you on then to the capital programme, section 3.2 and the appendix on page 29. What we've had with our capital programme is when we had the capital programme approved for 24-25, it was approved in the figure of just over 8.3 million. And when that was reviewed during the year, it was reduced down to just over 4 million. And in addition to that, since last reported, we have been awarded 2 grants. One was from the Welsh Government Energy Service for 64,000, and also a further allocation for the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. The reasoning behind the reduction in the capital programme at this point in time was, as members are aware, we're going through the Community Risk Management Plan consultation at this point in time, and we're looking at only investing essential investment at this point in time in the short term while we go through that Community Risk Management Planning process. If we look at Appendix B, you'll see that some good progress has been made with the minor works and steady state maintenance, making sure that the health and safety requirements are being met, etc. With regard to Earlswood and Davin, this is the site of Davin where our fleet engineering and logistics department is sited. That's the completion of the draining works has been completed. And also there, under the land and buildings, you see for Swansea Central and Swansea West that we've committed just over 350,000, and that is for roofing projects at those 2 properties. If I take you on then to section 3.3 of the report, which is the grant funding awards, and the appendices on pages 31 and 32. These outline the grants, list the grants that we've received during the financial year. The grants that we received for national resilience and community safety, we receive year on year, and also there with regard to the Joint Emergency Services Group. As I highlighted previously, a grant that we haven't had, we had for the first time this year was the pay pressure grant of 320,000, and listed on the page, bottom of page 32, are the 2 capital grants that I've just alluded to as well with regard to vehicle charging and the low carbon heat grant. And I can assure members that the officers are working to ensure that grants are spent in accordance with terms and conditions and maximised. Finally then, with regard to the Treasury Management, section 3.4 and page 33, page 33 there, Appendix D, sets out the prudential and treasury management indicators. You'll see there the external debt split between PWLB, Public Works Loan Board, and local authorities. And you'll also see that the total debt is actually reduced during the year. And that is in line with a reduced capital programme, an underspending revenue, which has given us more cash. So we've been able to delay our borrowing, which is a good thing at this point in time when the interest rates are still quite an elevated level. You'll also see there as well with investments at the end of the financial year, at the end of February, we had an investment balance of cash balance of just over 3 million. And what I can assure members is that all Treasury management activity has been undertaken in accordance with our Treasury management strategy. If I just take you then quickly to section 8 and just highlight here a couple of risks to the forecast outturn position. In 8.2 there, you'll see the emerging pressure with regard to our cultural journey. And also, as I alluded to earlier, the national insurance impact, not listed there, but we're seeing that we're having additional pressures for that. I expect there to be further payments, as I said, with regard to the wildfire for the on-call. And we've also, since this report has been written, seen pressures on the budget as well. coming out for 25-26. So those are a couple of emerging areas. There is a potential for the underspend to increase at this point in the year where we have revenue commitments that may not come to fruition by the 31st of March is gone, but in the next report may not have come to fruition. However, it is important that we make sure that we earmark that money going forward for those particular work streams. And then also in 8.8, just to remind members with regard to the fire link, there is potential here for a £600,000 saving. But again, we are still waiting on the courts. We're now waiting to see if Motorola take their appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. And at this point in time, we're being advised by Welsh Government that this funding just needs to be held within a reserve, because there is a possibility that if Motorola were to win their appeal, then we would have to repay the credit. So we're holding that at the moment. If it was to come to fruition, then I would remind members of the Emergency Services Network project and the costs that we are going to be envisaging in the next couple of years. Okay, and I will stop there, and I will hand back to the chair and to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the report. Are there any questions? I can't see any hands up. Can you, Angharad?
Yeah, Councillor Emlyn and Councillor Don Davis.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair. Sorry, page 31, in terms of grant allocation, third aspect is to do with youth engagement. A bit more detail about how that money is spent, please.
When are you ready? The national resilience.
I'll have to come back to you, sorry. I believe there's certainly one officer who's employed through that grant scheme, who's a youth lead engagement officer. With regard to the remainder of the grant, I have to come back to you, because Peter will have the answer. He's on leave today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions really. I suppose it's only right and proper that we remind ourselves really at this juncture that we sit as 25 members of the Fire Authority, representing the public, the taxpayers that fund government, because government, as you've heard me say many times, have no money, it is all taxpayers' money. And in that regard, can I firstly say this, that I think it is commendable that we find ourselves with a predicted at this point in time, acknowledging there's another month to go, when it's been a very busy month, just listening to the operational layout of the last month or so. So my question to Sarah is this in the first regard. I understand we have a cultural review that's come over the hill unexpectedly, and there are significant commitments that will need to be funded in that regard, which is commendable and understandable. So at this point, with a month to go, looking at a surplus of over £1 million. Some of it will be allocated, I expect, as far as looking to the future of dealing with the rollout of and the fallout of the cultural review. So fine. Where do you foresee the remainder of the surplus being allocated to? This is looking ahead rather than looking back. Was in that regard, speeding today. And increasingly so, you've mentioned, it comes as no surprise, there's a 65, Matt Rickford has recently announced it and rehearsed it, £65 million shortfall in the National Insurance contribution. And I remember asking you this question, and we need to remind ourselves as well, we've passported the 100% burden and risk of that onto our constituent authorities. And this is the bit I miss really. If I was wearing Director of Finance hat, whether I was in Swansea or Neath Talbot or Pembrokeshire or any of the other constituent authorities this morning, we've received a £320,000 pay pressure grant, yeah? And I may have missed something here, directly into the coffers of Mid and West Wales Fire Authority. Pay pressure grants, yeah? Which is great, which is good to have. And we thank the Welsh Government for that one-off.
But when we set our budget and we had pay pressure in regards, for instance, of the new banding regime, we then pass on that burden to the local authority. So if I was a chief executive reading this at this present time, saying, well, why didn't that pay pressure grant go directly back to the constituent authorities rather than bypass them, who took the initial pressures and burden of the banding, which is very much, it can be described as a pay pressure, because we added and loaded that on to the original percentage. Because increasingly so, as we look to next year's financial year, with the national insurance contribution pressures, well, there's 65 million plus the hidden ones that we all seem to be suffering, and emerging as well. There will be increasing pushback from our constituent authorities. I tend to feel it and hear it more so than I did when I first became a member. And of course, the ballot box becomes a greater focus as 2027 bestows upon us and 26 for Welsh Government. So what's the plan in that regard? Because you're going to be coming under increasing pressure from your constituent authorities. You've got these one-off payments coming in grants from Welsh Government, bypassing the constituent authorities who've taken the risk and the burden initially. So over to you. Sorry,
okay.
If I kind of confused you. I'm confusing myself as well.
Right, there's several questions in there, so forgive me if I don't remember them all. I'm sure you will remind me. Okay, I'm going to deal with the last one first. Okay, I'll deal with the pay banding first. So when we set the budget for 24-25, the financial year we're talking about, we weren't aware of pay banding. So that was a pressure in the year. So the grant that we had offset the pressure that we had, because at that point we hadn't charged it into the levy. Okay? So for 24-25, we had a pay pressure of approximately 379,000 for the last quarter of the financial year. We heard about it in July 2024, but we'd set our budget in February 2024. So the grant that came in my opinion, wouldn't have needed to have gone to the local authority in 24-25, because the pay pressure was being footed by ourselves.
Okay.
For 25-26, we have put the pay banding pay pressure into the levy, and the pay pressure grant is going into the RSG. So they are both going to the local authority in 25-26. So I'm fairly comfortable with that. With the national insurance and then passporting the 100% risk to local authorities, not 100%, I would say, because we didn't increase our contracts for the increase in national insurance. So the bit that we have passported to the local authorities is the hit on our direct employees only. And as I said earlier, we've already received notification from one contractor that they are going to have to increase their contract, and we will have to find that as a pressure in here. With regard to the shortfall in funding coming through from Welsh Government to the local authority now, and that pressure having to be picked up from local authorities, that is going to be a difficult conversation in the 25-26 budget round. Sorry, 26-27 budget round. And I think it will be a negotiation with local authorities as to how we manage that one with regard to the levy. I think the other bit that you were alluding to is the underspend of £1 million, and effectively are we asked too much in the levy, and what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to put it going forward? And I think for me, this is a snapshot. This is a point in time. There's £1 million underspend here. I think what's more important for me is if we look at the big picture and the financial resilience that we have to deal with one-offs, state activities, etc. And we look at the financial sustainability of Mid and West Wales Fire Authority. And to do that, you need to look at our reserves. And I think that's potentially where I would direct councillors, members to look at this point in time, is where are we with regard to our financial resilience and our financial sustainability. And we have reserves of 6 million, 2 million in our general fund balance, and 4 million in our earmarked reserves. It's not a lot. And that was at the point in time at the end of last financial year, the 31st of March 2024. And if I go back just several years to 2021, they were at 9.3 million. So you can see that our reserves have fallen away. So whilst you may be concerned that we're reporting this underspend at this point in time, I think we need to consider our overall financial position. As I said, we look in the coffers and there's 6 million there. And then as to what are we going to do with this, if you look at the community risk management plan that we've members have approved and the direction of the authority going forward, and we need to consider our footprint, we need to consider the investment that we require in our property and the investment that we require in our fleet and equipment to make this a modern fire service that serves all of our communities. So I think for me, this 1.1 million predicted at this point in time, whilst it looks like we're underspent, and I know authorities are looking at overspends, I think we need to consider the investment that we need to make in the not too distant future to ensure the longevity of our service.
To you, Chair, I'm very grateful to Sarah for her honesty in answering these questions. And I'm patently aware of where she's coming from as far as her historical position, as far as reserves as well. The need for that insurance and backbone, given the demands that the service from time to time come across. I just wanted to reassure you as well. I am not concerned with regards to a 1.1 million. It's not a concern. I would be concerned if it was in the other direction. It is reassuring to know that we have it, and your answers and the detail of your answers empowers us then, as members, including myself, to be able to go back to our constituent authorities and explain the position on the basis of what you honestly shared with us. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it, anybody else got any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. It was a very detailed response and made things very clear, because we have lots of pressures in the Fire Authority. Thank you. So if I could go back to page 11 on the recommendation, this report is just for noting. So the resource management duly note this report. So if we could move on to agenda item 6, the people and wellbeing update report. Who's taking us through the report? Midrian?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fig. I'll give myself Midrian. Yes, thank you. So members, we're on item 6, and I'll take you to page 37. So this is a reflection of our for people wellbeing for the past year. So starting at section 2 then, just on the National Wales position, members, just to reiterate our position in regards to the wider Wales agenda on these particular matters. We are heavily involved from a collaborative approach with the other financial services. Some of the groups I mentioned there, some of which we did as well. It was only last week that I was in Newtown chairing the newly reinvigorated All Wales ED&I group. And going forward, that group will have a representative from Welsh Government attending that as well. And again, in terms of those conversations at that level, looking at the strategic equality plan, got the impact assessments, various other factors which you'll be familiar from other organs that you've received in authority. And again, in terms of the people and the organisation development group, or PODGE as it's called, and again, that looks at health and safety, health and wellbeing updates, workforce planning, recruitment, and various other factors as well. Turning to page 38, and there's some information there in regards to neurodivergence and neurodiversity disclosures. And again, we are seeing some of the increases, small increases occurring there in the different categories, whether it's during recruitment. or as is shown there in terms of the college assessments that we do as well. Think of some of the training courses that we run, and we keep an eye on that, and we have provided training to a number of managers in terms of assisting them to understand neurodiversity and allowing them to have the skill set to understand what that means and how they need to maybe make some small adjustments to accompany that within the departments, whether it's changing from verbal and written instructions to more visual instructions and having more focus on particular deadlines as opposed to written deadlines. Just moving on then to the establishment at the bottom of page 38. And again, you've got the establishment figure, which is fixed for the organisation. Because they work in establishments, so we do have some individuals which are grant funded and take other wider roles within the organisation and beyond that. And then headcount is as of the 10th of March, and that takes account of the vacancies that we have at that particular time. And again, in terms of external or external funded postings like urban search and rescue, for example, community safety, road safety, etc. So again, in terms of the establishment, substantive establishment is 1369, and it's been around that figure for many years. Turn the page to page 39 and some equal opportunities profiling that we have there. That's really focused on increasing the number of females within the organisation, and you will reflect on conversations we had in Fire Authority back in February when I presented the gender pay gap. It had slightly increased, and I gave you the rationale that the larger than normal pay increase that the operational sector received over the last 3 years, being that some 80% of our staff are male. We did find that did have a difference in widening that gap a bit. And again, we're making quite a few inroads in regards to trying to close that gap in terms of firefighter taster days and various others. And we're going to talk a little bit about recruitment in a moment. Age profiling, as you can see there, and we just keep that as an awareness figure, and actually we report all that information through our annual equality report. Should anybody wish to see that on our external intranet site. And in terms of turnover, we capture the turnover, and for those mathematicians amongst you, so we'll be looking at the starters and the leavers, and you'll see if there's any deficit there. Again, we've got deficit. We're using those figures then to plan ahead in terms of hotel recruitment. We've just completed the hotel recruitment campaign, and we've made some appointments as well. And again, we'll keep the surplus from that for a potential future course then occurring towards the autumn, going into early part of next year. And we're trying to do that to stay ahead of retirements and various other factors for reasons for leavers. Turn the page to page 40 then. So as I said, the revised firefighter pension scheme 2015. So moving to a non-retirement age of 60 years old. And again, with the LGPS, you'll be familiar with this in your county councils in regards to this, to the state pension age of 66 for men and women. And again, looking at 2026, 2028, we're going to see that national pension age change to 67. So that'll affect the individuals who were born after April 1960. So again, a lengthening of service within that. And again, we keep that, keep an overview of the turnover rates, as you can see there. I'm pleased to see that for the first 3 months this year, 2025, there's been less of a turnover across the categories that we've had there. And that's very pleasing to see, based on the report we just heard from the Treasurer in regards to the number of vacancies that we've been carrying over the last year, just with the challenges we've had in recruitment, in particular for some of the functions within the corporate function. Going down to 14.4 recruitment profile, hotel recruitment, and pleased to say we started the campaign in January of this year. There's a table there that gives you a bit of an overview in regards to the expressions of interest. We are still very strong, some 700. It's always been hovering around the 800 to 900 mark for a number of years. We used to do it on an always level, would you believe it, at one point, and we're just re-engaging North and South Wales at the moment in terms of what would that look like. Is the economies of scale, maybe having an always firefighter recruitment arrangement, and there's a lot of probably benefits that we'd achieve from that, let alone some cost savings, no doubt therein. So in terms of the table, just for clarity, in terms of male, female, and PNTS, I prefer not to say, just for anybody who's thinking what that means. And pleased to say at the bottom of that table, what you see is the number of the individuals past the interview and the group discussion, and they're on the holding list is a total of 64, made up of 48 male and 16 female, so 25% are female, so really great to see. And just to mention that from the last hotel recruitment campaign that we did and the low numbers of interest we had from female members of the public, we did reach out to them. We asked them why they'd withdrawn themselves from the process. Was there anything more we could do, etc. And one of the key factors that we did change was to remove the peak test, which is quite a physical, demanding test where you're running between points against a tone, and that tone speeds up, and you need to maintain that level of activity over that period of time. And we removed that, and it didn't impair on the National Fire Service fitness standards. We reverted back to the Chester treadmill test, and that's a test over a particular short period of time on the gradient on the treadmill. And as you go along over the different minutes, the speed increases and the gradient increases as well. And that's to measure your cardiovascular assessment from that. So again, in terms of what I just mentioned there, so there's a number of individuals, as you'll see, coming into the on-call recruitment profile. There's a lot of interest within a number of in the divisions that we have. And in regards to the next stages, moving away from that, then some of which are within the process of assessing whether they're suitable for the role and the stages that they're going to from that. So going on to support staff recruitment retention at the bottom of page 41, and as the section 141 mentioned, we have, and I've reported before here now in terms of the challenges we've had in the corporate service side of the organisation in terms of managing vacancies, in particular for some key departments. One of the key ones is ICT with us. I'm sure if you speak to colleagues within your county council, they will say how challenging it is at this moment in time within the IT sector, certainly within the public sector, to recruit specialists into those roles. Again, we're making a big concerted effort during the month of April to run quite a big campaign to open up the opportunities for members of the public and try and draw more interest into the organisation for some of the corporate roles that we have, which in fact, we look at some of the benefits we provide, which I've captured in the 14.4.3 there, in terms of flexible working arrangements. And as I work in, and at this moment in time, our corporate staff can work up to 2 days remotely, be that at their home address, be that a fire station, etc. But we are competing in the public sector with the likes of the county councils, which for some, they are working up to 3 days, if not more, in some county councils. And again, Welsh Government predominantly work remotely, if not working from home across the board. So I'd imagine that anybody looking at a role within the public sector is going to be looking for some of these benefits, which are not financial, or indirectly not financial. Even on the bottom of page 41, in terms of the firefighter pension scheme, and I just want to repeat the extract you've got on page 41 and 42 is a repeat of what the chair of the local pension board provided fire authority members in regards to the remedial service statements. But we'll need to capture it within this report for consistency and accuracy. And again, we're working with Carlisle County Council closely on trying to make sure that we remedy the situation in terms of the delay in getting the RSS statements out to the affected members. And again, we'll have a further update at our next local pension board, which is on the 28th of this month, everybody. And on the bottom, in terms of the second options exercise in regards to retained firefighters and the firefighters pension scheme and compensation scheme amendment, Wales Audit 2024. And again, overleaf on page 43, it does indicate some of the challenges that we've had in trying to recover so the information that we've been looking for. And in terms of individuals who've been long retired from the organisation, and trying to pick up on where their last known location is in order for us to get a definitive view from them as to whether they want the buyback option for those for the pensions in question. And again, we're working with that. And again, even in terms of working with various agencies to try and identify where those individuals have moved on, to try and assist us and make sure that we can give everybody the perfect opportunity to consider the options. In terms of the internal dispute resolution procedures, stage 1 and 2, and again, we have received 2. We received 4 in totality, but we have looked at 2, and the Chief Officer, he's considered those complaints, and those were to do with some pension matters. So I think for one of them, at the very least, was to do with incorrect figures which had come from the pension administrator into us, which gave a slightly different date on the predicted retirement date compared with what that individual was aware of. So those are the type of things that will fix up in the internal dispute resolution procedures. Again, the other 2 are under review at the moment. Health and wellbeing, colleagues, in terms of bottom of page 43, and again, we do benchmark ourselves against our colleagues in North and South Wales. We're very much around the middle of the field in regards to the data table that you've got there. And I know that other colleagues from North and South, we do have conversations about our welfare arrangements and welfare support arrangements, and are there any glimpses of good practice that we can share amongst us to make sure that we are trying to be as consistent as possible with such matters. Turning to page 44. And again, in terms of totality, in terms of shifts loss protection or full-time equivalent, and in regards to 24-25, we're looking at around 10 days per person. And compared with the previous year that you've seen there, 23-24, the actual. So we have seen a bit of a good progress within 22-23, because again, that was on the back of the COVID absences, which some of the absences were masked by COVID. And then coming into the current year then, so it does look like at the end of year prediction at this moment is about 11.5 days per person. Coming down the page to the next table on page 44 then, so we provide a breakdown of days lost by key absence reason, and as you can see for 24-25, it's just short of 9,000 days lost across the service in regards to that. What this doesn't capture, everybody, is all the managerial arrangements that need to happen to make sure that those are undertaken in the right way and adhere to the processes that we have. So in terms of the amount of time that's devoted to that, that's probably not a true reflection, maybe something we need to be working on in terms of presenting that to members in some way. And in terms of looking at trends, and as you can see that the mental health one is on the increase as an example, and the other typically, and as we've annotated at the bottom, and the list is not exhaustive, but it refers to matters relating to neurological conditions, reproductive health issues, gastrointestinal problems, etc., etc. So again, in terms of that information, important that we keep an eye on that and see any emerging trends from that to influence changes in managerial arrangements. And last page, page 45, then occupational health clinics. That's provided by Instinct Healthcare, who all our medical work. And again, we keep those updated in regards to the clinics available. And again, each clinic could see anything between 6 and 9 individuals, sometimes more. So there's a lot of turnover in regards to their use. And finally, then firefighter fitness testing. And we have been hovering around 1 or 2, usually unsatisfactory, where they failed the fitness test. And we have seen a bit of a spike now in terms of 8 at the moment in time. And again, the fitness team will have a dedicated plan bespoke to individuals, unless, of course, that they are suffering some inner health or they've got some physical ailment that prevents them from re-engaging the program. But again, each and every one of those individuals will be linked to our occupational health arrangements and linked to a fitness team, so they can build a plan for those individuals with the view to bringing them back to full operational fitness. So members, that concludes my update to use for information, but I'm happy to take any questions. I'm conscious I've got the head of HR here today, but we'll do everything we can to respond to your members.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions, Angharad?
Yeah, Councillor Bryan and Councillor Thomas.
Can I just ask there, taster days,
Are they achieving what you thought they'd achieve when you first started them off? And secondly, over the years, I'm talking years, I don't know if they've been going for years or 1 year, how have they changed? What's the makeup of those taster days? How have they changed over the years?
No, very good question, Councillor David. And yeah, we embarked on it probably more we considered after the last 3 to 4 years, where we've tried to open up an awareness of the organisation for females and the represented groups as well. We've done that as well. We've had them in the Earlswood Training Centre. Probably initially they weren't very popular, but that was probably more to do with the way we were advertising them and what we're trying to use the opportunity for. I think they have changed. I mean, whereas before they maybe be brought into an environment maybe dominated by male presence as well, but now we've changed it all and we've listened to feedback from people who've attended it. We've looked at the type of maybe apprehensions that those members of the public had in terms of climbing a ladder. So does that need to be a feature? Do we start building a confidence program even throughout that day to look at particular sectors, but also to make sure that we give the overview of what the organisation provides as well, not purely the firefighting bit, but what the benefits come about from a firefighter role. And that's working with the community, working with children, young people, various other factors. So I think we've seen that develop over the last couple of years. They are popular, and yeah, I don't know if there's anybody on my colleagues from operations sector here, but I'm sure the Deputy Chief might add in.
Thank you, Mid. Yeah, just to add through the chair, if I may. I think this is exactly the sort of thing that we try and capture through the CIMP approach, because those taster days invariably involved putting a ladder up and running some hose out. And when we step back and look at what that actually means in terms of our day-to-day duty, it means far, far less than what it did 2 decades ago. So we need to be better at shaping those taster days to reflect what society needs from the service going forward. So putting the ladder first up and running the hose first out may not be the right approach going forward. And if you think about the update that Justin provided at the start of the meeting in regard to the activity over the last month, with all the wildfires, no ladders and no lay flat hose anywhere near those incidents for us, and yet a real pressure point for us as a service over the last month. So yeah, we need to get smarter at targeting the right individuals. So we maybe by adjusting the taster days to reflect what we're actually doing, we'll attract a more diverse group of individuals into the organisation, and we have done over the last few decades. So,
can I raise one other question, Chair? Those taster days, are they an added expense to the budget, or are you utilising crews already there?
I think they're run primarily by staff from training department and from HR. So
there's no added expense.
There's no added on cost. It's a hidden cost, you say.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Michigan, I may be in a pedantic mood today, so
that's fine.
I'm not sure. Executive summary, page 37. We got community risk management plan at 5 and well-being goals for future generation. Do we need, as an overriding factor, that we need to start linking these two together? And in relation to 6, it's considered but not deemed relevant to the report. I wonder, I see a certain relevance to the report because 3 is a healthier Wales and 4 are more equal Wales.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we should start reflecting this and the journey that we're on. I just think it would help us in future discussions that we're clear on what the direction we are taking. So it's just an overarching thing which I think perhaps we need to be buying into, really.
Councillor Thomas, very valid point, and I'll take that back to my colleagues here about it.
Chair, can I ask questions, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, John. I'm conscious that Heaven is over in the corner and again, he's getting money for nothing.
Sorry, can I say that because the chair's using her mobile phone, she'll be able to dial in for the translation.
Go back to your phone then, Evan, that's right then. Right then, sorry, just to Joe from Adnoddau, thank you for the report. In terms of the gender profile, I've seen the figures here. So in terms of trends, so in terms of recruitment of female firefighters, either on call or all time, is the trend going upwards in terms of female recruitment or stable or losing, or where are we in terms of the trends?
From the last sort of recruitment campaign, if you look at, I think she'll be attending the pass-up parade, I think just within a week or two, or some of you may be attending that, and all firefighters are white males. So we weren't successful in getting enough female candidates in the last sort of recruitment campaign. But on this one now, that'll be starting very soon now. They will have a quarter of them being female. So are we trying? We're trying to look at what are the opportunities available. Are we the career of choice for females out there? And that's a question that's been posed and challenged to all fire rescue services across the country, especially with the added background of matters related to culture and change within fire rescue services. So everything that's happening now is maybe having an impact on whether we have interest from not just females but underrepresented groups as well. We are seeing spikes of it, and for the on-call firefighters, we have made a decision to we employ 2 on-call advocates. So effectively, the on-call firefighters that we devote some particular time to them, which we pay them, and they go into particular parts of the division to look at, if they're doing a recruitment campaign for their particular station, they can look at what type of individuals they need for that particular station. And a big part of that is the gender balance and also the underrepresented groups as well. And I know that the police do it very well because they do target the community in terms of recruiting for that particular police force. And there's a lot of great work out in the different blue light sectors. I think we're a little bit behind that, but we're trying to make every effort that we can to try and encourage, make sure that we do become the career of choice for individuals, certainly females, within society. So I think we are seeing an increase. It is getting better. I think we've got much more work to do, and I think there's a wider branding of fire services that's probably needed going forward for the future.
Can I just add to that then, and again for the chair for me, and again I keep coming back to CRMP. This is what we are trying to achieve through CRMP. And I think Midran is right to refer to the police. And if I can, I'll bring ACC Mary again now. And it's interesting that she's here today. I think we're a couple of decades behind the police in terms of that ability to shift. And I think of the analogy of selling a house. We're trying to sell the same house. We're working far, far harder at selling this house, but we haven't adapted the house at all. So we're advertising further afield. We're changing our processes. We're doing things differently, but it's still the same house. And we need to look at that product that we're actually selling out there to make it more attractive. And we haven't quite grasped that as yet. Going forward, that's the aim for us. And I think, as I say, I think we're probably a couple of decades behind the police, because if you look back where the police forces were in 1960s, they were 6'6" white men, but you managed somehow to progress things far better than we have. So if you don't mind coming into this.
Not at all. So in terms of our current stats, female officers, we sit at about 37%. Obviously, with staff members, we sit over 50%. We're in a very healthy position in terms of recruitment into the organisation. We look at our pipeline of talent internally in terms of how we progress our females through the organisation, and we've got some really supportive networks. For example, a gender equality network will sit and support, but we also put in intervention measures internally. We've got challenges with working parents, working mums in particular, who want to work specific hours in specific roles. So we've really adapted our policies, our practices, our procedures to be able to accommodate them, particularly those that may have young children and want school term hours. So we've got flexible contracting in place. With regards to our recruitment, we work backwards, so we start very young, education right through to the colleges and the universities, and that's not just for our female recruitment, that's for our BAME officers. So for example, this year we know we've got a deficit in our public service centre with regards to calls for service coming in. during our peak periods. We're working with the universities. We've gone out and we've recruited students over the summer period, and that then also helps us to target our female recruitment and our BAME recruitment as well. But we offer them contracts that will attract them back in after they finish their university degree. And then that allows us then opportunities when you look at your corporate challenges, for example, your ICT recruitment, those corporate posts. We also then educate them in terms of what's available within policing. So we are in a, there's still a lot of work in progress in terms of female recruitment and how we look after them, particularly when they go off and they start their families and we're bringing them back into work. But we are in a healthier position. And when you look at us nationally, South Wales Police, where I operate from, our retention of officers, we sit top within the country. So we are doing a lot of work, and we're also sharing that work with our colleagues across policing, and of course we can share with service.
Yeah, so for me, the valid point that you made is that your direction of travel is very positive.
Yes.
In terms of your gender profile and also in terms of your retention. So that's good to know. And I think it then raises the question about us as a fire service, fire rescue service, collaborative. Obviously, you've gone through the learning curve.
Yeah.
And we could sort of pick up on, I'm sure, a lot of those matters. So thank you for that. So,
yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your contributions there. Are there any more hands up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, if I may. I think it's reassuring, well, it is reassuring, it's not about what I wouldn't think. Given the adversity that surrounds fire and rescue service in Wales in regards to culture and cultural reviews and cultural reports and all that that entails, it still remains reassuring. And I think we can take great solace from the fact that we had over 700 people express a wish to become part of this profession. And that in its own right is a positive headline when you consider the numbers available. So I think we mustn't lose sight of that fact, given all the challenges that we are navigating ourselves through at this present time. Further down, and Mr. knows I touched upon it earlier this morning, the elephant in the room, not just of the fire service, it's symptomatic of the whole public sector, and the Prime Minister has touched upon it recently. But it doesn't really make good reading as far as value for money, when nearly 9,000 days are lost in the workplace. And interestingly, it would be interesting to know how that equates into financial sums. Because again, back to our accountability rule to the taxpayer, because it is a publicly funded body. And listen, you are no different to whether it's local authorities, the police, quoted the headlines recently. I think it was about 15% of their workforce were either offset or on restricted duties. And the challenge is across the piece, and it's the post-COVID world, especially in relation to mental health. And I make no apologies to raise it, because it is now the focus of scrutiny across the public sector. So in that regard, I suppose my question to you, Midra, is where do we go next as far as trying, because otherwise the prediction will continue to ascend, which is not useful as far as public confidence and certainly as far as the accountability of the public purse. So how do we, what do we do different? Where do we go next?
It's a really good question. So there is something we've posed ourselves for quite a while now, and in regards to some of the emerging trends we're seeing both within the service and within society. To answer your first question, I think I mentioned this morning that I intimated that the 9,000 lost days would probably work around to about 1.6 million, and I was pleased to be quite close to it. It's 1.54 million actually, which I was confirmed, and that's just basing salaries across the all roles and duty patterns that we have. In terms of internal processes, so what we're finding is that the short-term absences are starting to stretch beyond the week, where your self-implication starts to go a bit longer. And a lot of that is down to not being able to access resources, their GP, their medical specialist, to get assistance in diagnosis, scans, operations even, post-op recovery and various other aspects. So when you're looking at a big chunk of the organisation being operational, then if they have been ankle sprains, then that can prevent them from working in the operational capacity. So we have an internal group within the organisation called the Fitness Advisory Panel, and where long-term absences start to, it used to be 6 months, we brought that back, brought the threshold back to 3 months. Because if somebody we know has an ailment we know and has a pattern of having an extended period of absence, then why wouldn't we try and see if we can intervene any sooner, whether that's signposting, finding out where they are, whether they've gone through our occupational health route, what's the medical advice coming through. And I think we still come back to the key point is this long protracted length before they're seen by specialists, by consultants and various other things. We do look at business cases whereby if we had an operational firefighter which needed some keyhole surgery, for example, and we'd look at what's the long-term length of that person being off work, compared with actually if we provided some intervention in terms of maybe supporting some finances to get the diagnosis and to allow them to go into a treatment position, is that going to accelerate that person back into the workplace? But that's why we don't hold a budget at all in terms of these type of considerations. So that brings itself some challenges for us. But what we are doing, and it will come to the attention authority over the next couple of months, in so much that we've looked at, through our HR department, looked at the opportunities to acquire a private health package. And when you look at, we know that we're spending, those absences convert into some 1.6 million of salaries of individuals that are not in the workplace. And like I said to you before, from an operational perspective, where you have the operational firefighters away from their place of duty for more than a month, then there's the need to backfill those positions, and usually they come from the on-call sector on whole-time contract. So there's a big tier of movements behind, notwithstanding all the managerial input and costs that come with that in trying to manage the whole sickness absence process. So I'd hasten to say you're probably around the lines of doubling that figure if you looked at everything and accounted for everything in detail. So when you look at what's out there in the organisation, so far rescue services have embarked on it, and you're looking at a package of a couple 100,000, but that would give you then, that would give members of staff then, whether you looked at a part paid, a fully funded scheme, whatever that looks like. But there are providers out there that potentially could accelerate the treatment process for vast majority of individuals that we're seeing. Not everything. There will be elements that we can do separately, and we still do that. But there will be some of the hard to reach processes that stem months of absence, and we can't do anything about it unless that individual pays to go private themselves, or they just go through the NHS process. So that's something we're looking at now in terms of a value for money type of exercise, and that's going through the governance routes at the moment to sense check whether it is the direction we'd want to put on the table. So that would give us some indication of what we can do. But that doesn't take away from, of these absences, how much of these were preventable? How much of these are down to managerial intervention? How much of these are down to the economic factors and the factors that we present within the workplace? What are the adaptability that we have as an organisation? Where if somebody couldn't be operational, could they function? And we do it. Could they function in a non-operational role for the period of their waiting for their treatment to occur? Are there any changes that we can make to that individual's role to make sure that they're still providing added value to the organisation while they're still recovering? So the number of facets that we are considering, but I think the biggest issue we have is the long delays in waiting outside by the NHS. And if we can find a way that tries to bridge or even reduce that gap, I think, Councillor Davies, we should see that those number of days, the 9,000 days, reducing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, grateful for that. And through you, Chair, I think you sort of really issue with that the focus remains.
Yeah.
And that you are looking at other initiatives, other alternatives to try and deal with this challenge. And it's not just a monetary challenge. you know, it's a contributory factor when people are off leave of absence for all good reasons, sometimes mostly. It puts pressure on the remaining workforce, which can add to these figures by stresses and other strains as well. And there needs to be that equitable approach for those that are suffering and those that remain in work as well. It's a
Right, thank you, Councillor Davis. Thank you for that response as well. It was very detailed and sounds like a very sensible approach. Right, that report was for noting, so it's duly noted by the Resource Management Committee. And that takes us on to our final agenda item, which is any other items of business that by reason of special circumstances the Chair decides should be considered as a matter of urgency, pursuant to section 104B of the Local Government Act 1972. So, is there anything, Dave?
No, nothing, thankfully, Chair.
Okay, that all remains is to thank you for your attendance this morning and all your contributions to the meeting. Thank you, and the meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.